There was a lot of interest a few months back when we had a DVD on fox hunting. A lot of members were interested in learning more about it. So tonight we bring you a program on fox hunting by our local experts, John, WB0 CMC, and Bill, WA9 ASD. Take it away. Okay.
All right. Well, it's been a while since we've done any fox hunting in the area, as far as I know. And we've kind of got a two-part program tonight, HF and VHF. And I think we'll probably start out with HF, and I will give you the Elmer Fudd of HF, Bill.
That's it, folks. Well, if you were here a couple of months ago for that video, you got a much better introduction to HF fox hunting than I can provide, as I've never done that. And those hunts are typically on 80 meters in CW. They're done on foot, which I will probably never do. Out in open country, sometimes they involve elements of orienteering. Usually they have a fixed starting point and they let one hunter go at a time, or a couple. And the event's scored by elapsed time to find the transmitter. On those frequencies, the typical antenna is a loop stick, just like you would have in a portable radio. As I think you've seen, those loop stick antennas are fairly directional. The receiver itself usually has a tone oscillator built into it that's driven by the signal strength. So when you have the antenna oriented to the null, the tone is lowest, and then as you find the high point of the direction, it gets higher. So, and that was shown in that video. There is, I don't know if there is any currently, but when I first started fox hunting, I actually started hunting on 10 meters. And the club that I belonged to in Illinois had a repeater on 10 meters AM, up in the top of the band on the odd numbered frequencies. The even numbers go to the FM repeaters. And so we used to hunt with AM radios up there. And this, as a matter of fact, is the radio that I used. Now, transmitter hunting obviously relies on signal strength to determine if you're pointing your antenna in the right direction. And so you'll notice that there's no indicator on this, so I adapted another indicator so that I could tell what the signal strength was. This just reads the ABC voltage out of this radio. And the only antenna used was a 9-foot whip mounted on the back of the car in the middle of the bumper. That was back in the days when bumpers had steel in them. And so you could mount an antenna back there, and it connected very well to the ground plane. And the way the hunts were operated is they had a fixed starting time, usually like 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. And people could start anywhere they wanted. Most transmitter hunts have a certain geographic area that they're restricted to. The transmitter will be somewhere in this area. And so what people would do is they'd find on Sunday afternoon an empty parking lot, which is getting harder to do nowadays, and drive in a circle while the fox was transmitting. And when they got the strongest S meter reading, they were pointing in the direction that the transmitter was. And so they would drive off in that direction and wait for the next signal, and if it was stronger, they'd keep going that way. So it was a lot of hit and miss stuff, but it was fun, and they were very entertaining. Most people were running converted CBs as transmitters, so there were only 3 to 4 watts of RF available, so signals weren't all that strong. I did manage to win a hunt once, and they changed the rules after that hunt, because I used this on my CB, which puts out about 60 watts. And so people were having no trouble hearing me transmit when they started. And as they got closer, they found that they couldn't attenuate the signal enough to figure out what direction I was in. That hunt went for quite a while. So they changed the rules and they limited the power output in that hunt. So that's how that went. But that was a lot of fun. And I still have a 9-foot whip in case anybody wants to go 10-meter hunting. Let me see, what else? Those hunts, the guy hiding was usually in a car because it was a very imprecise direction finding technique. So it was a matter of driving around until the signal got so strong that you could hear the guy talking, you know, listening out the window. Plus they were daytime so you could see his car. That was another thing that people like to do, is borrow somebody else's car, which was perfectly legal. So anyways, that's what I have experienced in 10-meter hunting.
Okay.
I'm going to talk a little about VHF hunting.
Okay, VHF and UHF. 2 meters is probably the most popular one that we've had around here. I put together a Robo-Rabbit, if you will, and it's got an idea in there with 5 positions in it. That you turn the thing on, if you get, is that ready to work? Turn it on so we can hear it. 146, 475.
Well, doesn't go that high. Okay.
Right now it's transmitting at a watt. It will go up to 10. Actually, it only runs about 8. It's with the battery in there. But very distinctive. And I think at the end of the call sign it says raspberries, you know, like moo. And the first person to find it will go to the ID switch and click it once. All of a sudden the ID changes and everybody that's still out there looking, you can hear them saying, oh. But we've used this a lot. It's been hooked up to a 120 watt amplifier before too. And you may ask, well, how do you get close on something like this? There's a number of ways you can do that. With a handheld, battery's dead in this one, but rubber ducks do have directivity. Off the end of the duck is minimum sensitivity, so if you've got a signal, you can do one of these things, and where it's the weakest, it's in that direction. And if you go in that direction and it keeps getting weaker, well, you went the wrong way. You go back that way, 180 degrees from where you thought it was. So it's actually bi-directional, but it's a pretty good way to do it. When you get close, you can flip off 5 kcs, and that'll desense your radio just a little bit, and you get closer with it. 10 kcs, it may be a little too far off, but if you've got a dual band, you can go up to the 3rd harmonic. Because most of these transmitters, when you get close, will have some 3rd harmonic radiation. It's well below any engineering limits, but you can still, within 5 or 6 blocks, you do the same thing on UHF on the 3rd harmonic, which is in the 440, that'd be what, 420 to 440. Whatever 3 times the frequency is. So there's a lot of ways you can do it. Also, your body is a good attenuator. You get close, you can do one of these things, and where it gets weakest, it's that way. I came up years ago, and the battery in this one is probably dead too. It's a rechargeable NiCad that hasn't been used for, well, it actually shows something. But with this, I went down to Sherwin-Williams, got an empty paint can. It was nice and silver when I got it, And I found out that the seam down here is just a crimp seal, and it would leak RF. So I drew a bead of solder all the way around that, all the way around this one. And shielding is quite important when you get close. If you've got something that you can shield your radio with and have attenuators, well, that lets you get a lot closer. Well, I decided that with a radio like this, put it inside the can, and one little jack comes off the IF, 455 kilohertz. And I built myself a little board in here that takes that IF signal, and another one for the speaker, which came with the radio. But you just shield your radio this way. If I can get that on there. And I found that after I got it all together like that, I could get within 10 feet of a 10-watt transmitter, and it just barely moved the needle with no antenna. I also built a couple of attenuators in the lid here, 40 to 50 dB, and with that chip I'm using for the IF, I've got 90 dBs of range on that meter. That's a whole bunch. Your average radio, S meter on your radio is 20, maybe 30 if you're lucky. And I've got a sensitivity switch. You push it in, you've got minimum sensitivity, and that gives you full scale at about 30 dBs if you get close and need to get a real fine reading. But I found an awful lot of stuff with this thing. It's really done the job. From 0 to 90 dBs above the noise floor, you can kick in another 40 and 50, and with that, you can just take the cap off the antenna connector, and you can still hear stuff, a 100-watt amplifier within a block. If you put the cap back on, you have to get within about 10 feet.
John,
100-watt transmitter.
what's the frequency of Rabbit?
146, 475.
That's right. 475.
It's on simplex, but we have found all kinds of stuff around town over the years, myself and other people. Have you found anything?
Only with you, with
Oh.
finding the power poles with the arcing insulators and the ice melt heater on the radio tower and a few
Yeah.
other things.
But all kinds of things you can do with this. I think the toughest one to get solved was Western Electric at the time. This was back, what, 70s, I think.
Oh, I don't remember. Yeah, it must have been.
But they had brought in some industrial heating equipment from Baltimore, I think. And what they were a single triode oscillator, 3 kilowatts. And they used that on a little antenna to heat up some plastic or ceramic things that they were making out there, some kind of things for telephone circuits.